What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here, PackersNews.com, live on Facebook. Late in the day on Friday, jumping on here at the end of the week. Minicamp is over. The players are definitely out of town. Coaches are on their way. The long stretch before training camp starts is upon us. The Packers announcing their training camp schedule earlier this afternoon. 15 practices, all of them 11:30 or later. Thank you, Mike McCarthy. No ungodly early starts this year. But yeah, it's interesting that you look at the training camp schedule and you comparatively to, say, I mean, you go back to Mike Holmgren or Mike Sherman, they were having two-a-days, and now you look at their schedule and man, it's like Club Med comparatively. But just thought I'd jump on here. Short, we're going to keep it short today, but always something to talk about. Packer fans everywhere. Hello to everyone jumping in the comment section. Good to see you all. I hope you all watched the World Cup earlier this afternoon. Fantastic match between Spain and Portugal, and the other matches as well. But I have to get up very early to watch Australia, so that'll be fun. Here we go. Will Ty Montgomery be used as a third down back? I believe that will be his niche that he settles into. They haven't said as much. They've talked a lot about his versatility, but I do think that's the best role for him. I do think his versatility as an athlete and positionally puts him in a unique place as far as the Packers roster goes. I think if you go back and you watch the running of the table, if you want to call it that, a couple years ago, Ty Montgomery was a real key there. I know a lot of people talk about the return of Cook at tight end after he was injured that year, but the other component of that turnaround was Ty Montgomery. And it wasn't necessarily as a first and second down runner. It was very much on third down. The way Aaron Rodgers is able to use him out of the backfield to deploy him either in the backfield or in the slot or even on the perimeter, dependent on what he sees when he gets to the line of scrimmage and what the defense presents, he can dictate to the defense with his use of Montgomery. You saw it time and time again. I've put a couple of examples up on Twitter. If you just search my handle and then Montgomery and then look at the video part, you'll find a bunch of examples where he's used Montgomery in motion to basically get the defense to declare what it's doing, because it has to once he motions out of the backfield. So, yeah, I really think he'll be a true X factor for the Packers offense this year, and a lot of that will come on third down. Colin Cowherd said, okay, Alan, right there. Who cares what Colin Cowherd said? I've said it here before. You guys pay way too much attention to him. Ronaldo was on fire. Yes, he was. Is Earl Thomas a possibility? Matthew, I tend to doubt it. I can't see them giving up any kind of draft capital and or a player to go get a guy who wants to have a big final contract. Clearly, they've handed a bunch of those out. They're in the midst of, giving Aaron Rodgers a record-setting contract. I can't imagine that they're going to go and get Earl Thomas. Now, that said, say an injury happens, maybe they get into camp, and if he's still not signed or still not happy there in Seattle, and they perceive it to be a need, I can't completely close the door on the possibility, but I would be very surprised. Can Kenny Clark be the best defensive tackle on the team this year? Absolutely, and that's not to take anything away from Mike Daniels or Mo Wilkerson, but yeah, Kenny Clark has the talent to be one of the best in the league, let alone on the Packers roster. Haha, for Earl Thomas, who says no? The Seahawks. Predicted cornerback depth chart. Tony, ask me again once we've got, say, 10 days into training camp. And that's when we'll have seen these young guys with the pads on going up against, basically NFL caliber wide receivers day in and day out for a week or so. That's when we'll start to get a real feel. I know lots of excitement around Jair Alexander and Josh Jackson for good reason, but it is just shorts and helmets. It doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. They're still not doing much at the line of scrimmage. A lot of drill work, some team stuff, some 7-on-7, but it doesn't mean much of anything until they put the pads on and they start having to jam guys. They start having to make adjustments, checks at the line, passing out of routes, things of that nature. So Seattle doesn't want to pay Thomas deep down. Andrew, I agree. Was Vogel no good? No, Nick, I think Vogel was good. I think they feel that Scott can be special. I think I said to someone on Twitter, I think Vogel was like a big, tall drink of water in the middle of the desert. Punting had gotten so bad for so long in Green Bay that Vogel came around and looked like a competent punter, and everyone thought, oh my goodness, we found a punter. But clearly the Packers feel, the fact that they used a 5th-round pick on a punter tells you how they feel about Scott. So I don't think it was anything Vogel did, and I think he was fine. I think they saw a chance to improve and get someone who they think can be very special. Now, is that the case? Is he special? They better hope so, having used a 5th-round pick on him. But we'll see. I mean, he's been booming them in minicamp, but that doesn't mean much of anything until he faces a true rush and has to get his mechanics down and has to get things off. Win, chaps. What do you think about Cushing? I can't imagine them going after a guy who, has faced a couple suspensions, has dealt with numerous injury issues. I think they like Oren Burks and they like what they have on hand. And maybe if there's an injury in camp and he's still out there. But top 10 defense this year, aggressive. Brandon, I would say hovering around top 10. I think Mike Pettin makes a big difference. I think a large part of it will be how quickly the secondary gels. They have a chance to be. There's no doubt about it. B.J. Raji. You said it, Brett. B.J. Raji. That's all you really need to say. 5th is better than the 3rd. Well said, Chris. For Packer fans everywhere, I'm sure that the Packers can only hope that Scott is no B.J. Sander. I know it's early, but Oren Burks or Jake Ryan, it's early. I would not be surprised if Oren Burks gave him a run for his money, though. But let's see. Let's have the pads come on. Let's see him, take on some pulling guards, and let's see him try and shed some blocks before we start talking about whether he's ready to supplant veterans. Hi from Tucson. What's up, Robert? Why is Hankins still out there? Mike, because he wants to get paid a whole lot of money, and he's only a 1- and 2-down player. He's basically going to give you all he's got on 1st and 2nd down, and that's a lot, and he's a very good player on those downs, but he's not a pass rusher, and he basically fills a hole in the middle of the defense. Now, he does it very well, but he wants to get paid a whole heck of a lot of money, and especially at this point in the season, people have got their salary cap set, and they've got their cap structure pretty much squared away. They don't want to take on this huge contract. Now, I have little doubt that once camp starts, some injuries will happen around the league and he'll get signed. He's too good to be sat on the sideline for too long. What is Bulaga's health status? That's a great question. We don't really know. We have gotten a couple of reports from the Packers saying he's ahead of schedule, quote unquote, whatever that means. But we won't know anything until they report there July 26th for training camp, and when they start, practice on the 27th. We'll see where he lines up. I suspect, I would not expect him to be out there anytime soon. Who's showing the most in the weight room on the O-line? Well, Michael, we're not privy to work in the weight room, so I wouldn't know that. Would anyone give up a pick for Bulaga? No way. Especially now that it's out there that they asked him to take a pay cut and he refused. You got to think teams will think there's probably a 50-50 chance he gets cut. They'd much rather wait to see if he gets cut. And they don't want to take on his contract coming off an ACL injury. The guy's missed an insane amount of games the last 3 years. I just don't see it. Are Packers out of excuses this year? Can't blame Dom or Ted anymore. Well, Brandon, you can always blame somebody. We know it won't be Aaron Rodgers, so it's got to be Mike McCarthy, right? That's pretty easy at this point. I mean, this is Mike McCarthy's put up or shut up here. What happens to those 40 that don't make the 53? They sit out there and they hope they can find other jobs. What's up with Mike McCarthy getting pink slipped? He won't be anytime soon, but the end of the year, if they have a disappointing season, I wouldn't be surprised if he was. How many players stay in Green Bay in the offseason? Michael, I'd probably say around 30 to 40, dependent. I mean, a lot of the young guys do. Just because they can train and what have you. Some of the guys like Mike Daniels who make their home there, they're there a lot. A lot of the other veterans, they get away and they go to their hometowns or what have you. But yeah, I would, it's a good a good amount, but, you know, people like to get away. What's up with Winston and the interviews? James, we talked about this yesterday, but I'll just say, you know, Winston Moss has made it very clear that he doesn't want to deal with the media, and when he does have to, he will make it as trunculent and unpleasant as possible, and that's his right, and the media just has to soldier on. You think Burks will have an impact this year? Ask me again after we see them in pads. My initial thought is yes, but it doesn't really mean much right now. You guys ever feel threatened by a coach or a player? No, never, Brandon. I've had McCarthy, you know, get mad at me, but I never felt threatened about it. You know, it's part of the gig. Biggest surprise player? Ryan, if I told you that, it wouldn't be a surprise. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. It's a good question. I'd say, I mean, I've been saying it all offseason, so it's not really a surprise at this point coming from me, but I think Justin McCrae is going to surprise a whole lot of people. And I know he's kind of slated already, kind of front of the line to start at right guard, but I think he's going to take a big jump, and he's going to really solidify that spot and going to turn some heads. What is your opinion on Wilkerson? Dale, I think I'm curious to see how he's used in the defense with Pettin. You know, something that it's pretty clear he wasn't a fan of after Pettin left in New York was how much he was asked to do to sacrifice as opposed to get after the quarterback. Now that's going to happen. All defensive linemen have to do that. But on obvious passing situations, guys want to get up, you know, pin their ears back and get after it. And I think Mike lets him do that, or will let him do that. That's what he did when he was in New York. But I think a lot of it will depend on, you know, where his head is at. And there's no way of knowing that until, you know, we're a couple games in, they face some adversity. Is he going to fold like he did at the end down the stretch there in New York? Or, you know, is the presence of, say, a strong locker room, Aaron Rodgers, Mike Pettin getting after him day in and day out, is that going to keep him kind of engaged? I'm really interested to see what happens there. But I tell you what, if his head is on straight, that is a steal of a signing. There's no doubt about it. Which player's upside do you and your colleagues disagree on most? Ooh, Ken, that's a good question. I would say probably Randall Cobb, actually. I know Pete and Ryan and Michael and those guys, they really feel like he's lost a step, and you know, they talk about how he's kind of fading and you know, on the downslide of his career. I counter always with, when I watch the tape, I see a guy who is just as sprightly as he's ever been. Yes, he has suffered injuries, but he still gets open. He can still work over the middle. He still does everything he's always done. But, you know, the ball hasn't come to him as regularly as it has in the past, and that has given off an impression that he is, quote-unquote, slowing down. I don't think he's slowed down at all. I think he's the same player he's been for the last few years. His production has fallen because the quarterback has gone other places with the ball. But, you know, we're allowed to disagree. Do the Packers win the division? Ask me at the end of training camp. So much is going to happen over the course of the next 2 months as far as injuries and how teams look and how teams progress and things of that nature. I mean, whatever you say right now doesn't really mean a whole lot until they put pads on and they knock around a couple weeks, you know. Rodgers' contract, any news? Nothing. But as I've been saying all along, I would expect something right before camp starts. Are you thinking of bringing in Raji for O-line depth? Absolutely. And there it is, the Raji mention that makes me able to say goodbye, everyone. I'm going to take off. Thanks so much for all the questions. I hope you all have a great weekend. Step away, watch some World Cup games. Really exciting match this afternoon. That was fantastic. Otherwise, barring any breaking news, I'll be back on Monday to chat with y'all. Hope you have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.